Hi, and welcome to section 1.2 for Econ 2 on the AQA exam board. What will we see today? Today, we're going to be looking at the economic problem and market structures. But first, let's start with the purpose of economic activity. The central purpose of economic activity is to improve the economic welfare of society. Economic welfare is viewed as the accumulative happiness of individuals in society. Firms produce goods and services that economic agents consume. By consuming these goods and services, the consumers gain utility, which is essentially happiness. The more goods that are consumed, the happier individuals will be. Therefore, the production of more goods and services will increase economic welfare, and therefore the production of more goods and services is desirable. However, economic agents have unlimited wants, but resources in an economy are scarce. The environment is a prime example of a scarce resource, as it is finite. This means that we can only extract so much from the environment before all of the environment resources are exhausted. Furthermore, capital and labour are also scarce. This leads us to the economic problem, which is what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it, or how to distribute it. Let's start by looking at what to produce. There are a huge number of goods and services that an economy can produce. The community must decide what goods and services to produce and in what quantities to produce these goods and services. This indirectly decides what goods and services not to produce. In an economy, a variety of goods and services are produced. This is because economic agents gain more utility from consuming a variety of goods and services compared to just consuming one good. Diversity in consumption is preferred. The next part of the economic problem is how to produce these goods and services. Which factors of production will be used, and in what quantity should these factors of production be used to create these goods? This will depend on the country's factor endowment. A country who is relatively labour endowed will use a more labour intensive production technology compared to a country that is more capital endowed. This is because they are endowed with more labour, which means that labour is relatively cheap compared to capital and will therefore be used more intensively in the production process. The final part of the economic problem looks at for whom the goods are produced for, or how to distribute these goods and services that have been produced. The economic system has to determine who receives what. Should everyone receive the same share? Should the contribution to production be taken into account, and those that have contributed more receive more goods and services? Or should the distribution be determined by the ability to pay for the goods or services, i.e. those individuals who have more money consume a greater quantity of goods and services? So the economic problem is what to produce, i.e. what goods and services and in what quantities, how to produce these goods and services, i.e. what factors of production and in what quantities should be used to produce these goods, and finally, how to distribute these goods and services amongst the community. The economic problem applies to all societies no matter what level of development they have achieved. Different societies can adopt very different ways of solving the economic problem. Some countries believe that the free market is the best way to solve the economic problem. They believe that market forces will enhance the economic welfare of citizens. This type of economy is known as a market economy, and they believe that the government should play no role in markets, and market forces should rule. On the other hand, we can have a command economy, whereby the government chooses what happens to the resources in the economy. They decide what is produced, how it is produced, and who receives what. There is also a third type of market structure, whereby we have something in the middle. The government plays a role, and also the market plays a role. This is known as a mixed economy. Both a market economy and a command economy are theoretical structures, and in reality, all economies are mixed economies. This is because the government will need to provide certain goods, such as public goods like defence, street lighting and policing, and the government may also want to provide merit goods such as education and may want to play a role in healthcare. But economies can lean towards a market economy or a command economy. For example, America has quite a large private sector and is close to a market economy. In contrast, North Korea, China and Cuba are close to a command economy because the government controls a large proportion of economic activity. The UK is somewhere in the middle, but the mix in our economy has changed over time. Over time, the mix in the UK economy has moved more to a market economy. This is because Thatcher came into power in 1979 and believed that market forces were the best way to solve the economic problem. She deregulated many industries such as banking and privatised many state-owned companies/industries such as telecoms, railways, utilities and many more. Since the 1980s, the mix has remained about the same.